All right, good afternoon, everybody. Oh, started in there a little bit hot. Good afternoon, everybody. You guys know me as Kimbro, but today on this show, I am the Pod Owl, and I have the honor of having some quality time with director, my good man, Richard C. Leedis. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well, Kimbro. I'm really happy to be here with you.
I'm so glad you flew out for my podcast, specifically for me.
Well, it's that first class ticket really helped. Thank you.
No problem.
I mean, podcasts have, it's where the money is. So,
I know you're doing movies and you got serious meetings and investors and creatives and A-list talent and all that stuff as your secondary motivation for coming out. But I appreciate
the podcast
making
is
me the
top.
number one.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's love right there. I have had the honor of meeting you on your set that you wrote and produced the film, and I don't want to go into it because I know it's too early to talk about it, but I just want to let folks know how we met.
Right, yeah.
And got a chance to see how you work and see a little bit of what the film was about, read the script, and I was just really impressed and honored to be on your set, even though I was kind of like, in the fringe of the crew, which is the best place to be if you want to observe it all.
Yes.
Because you don't have the pressure that comes with specific departments.
Pressure?
Yeah. If anybody knows anything about pressure, it's the director, right? But it was a real treat. Like, I learned a lot from you.
It was for me, too. It was a great cast crew. But I interrupted. Go ahead. You were saying.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say it was an honor working with you and watching you and being a part of something you've been working on for 13 years that we were able to bring across the finish line and get it in the can. So, I want to say thank you for having me a part of your film ecosystem and your community.
Well, thank you. I mean, it was just great energy. And I thought we all worked so well together, which is, it's unusual not to have at least one instrument that's not quite tuned, but we were all in tune.
You mean an asshole?
Yes, I think that's the technical term. Yeah, I didn't want to throw that out there because I don't know if everyone is familiar with that film term, asshole.
And they can pop up anywhere. It could be at the top, it could be at the middle, it could be at the bottom. It doesn't matter. Once they pop up, it could ruin the culture of the whole thing.
Yeah. But it was really a great cast and crew, and we were able to work under the double threat of COVID stopping us or the weather stopping us. We accomplished so much in such a little amount of time, and we really needed to, like a symphony orchestra, kind of play together. And we really did.
And it was a day-by-day thing. Like, every day it's like, okay, we got another day. We beat the COVID. We beat the weather. We beat the knucklehead. I think we're going to do this. And then one day someone says, does anybody have eyes on the director's glasses? And I was like, oh, there it is.
Right. That's it. The guy is going to be crawling around on the floor for a couple days.
Oh, it was really awesome.
And of course, it was someone in sound that found the glasses.
Of course,
not the camera crew or but somebody who's focused on sound spotted the glasses, which I think is great irony.
Sound is good for that.
Sound is good for that.
We got the eyes. We see everything.
Right.
We might be under the cones, but we don't miss a thing.
Right.
But it was really a lot of fun. And when you're ready to go into a little bit more detail, like, I want to be part of your media launch when you're further down the road and you're ready for your premiere or your festivals.
We're not having lunch today. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, we're having lunch. You like El Pollo Loco? 'Cause that's my budget for Crafty. My Crafty budget is El Pollo.
Yeah, definitely we'll do that. We're editing now, and it's going well. And I'm cautiously optimistic. We'll, 23, the beginning of 23, will be a good time for us.
What's your festival goal for the film? Do you have any festivals picked out that you're kind of zeroing in on?
Well, I'm starting one in my apartment.
Kind of like
the
the
Richard
Jerjasian
Leeds Film Festival, and I'm feeling lucky.
Your UPM started a festival in her Mercedes Benz while she was driving down the 405. I think I'm gonna produce a film festival. What do you want to call it? What do you think? The Jerjasian Film Festival. Hello.
Yeah, I mean, it's inspiring. I mean, but we'll see. I don't want to name any names, but we're cautiously optimistic that we'll get it in a good film festival, very good film festival early. It's always such a question of strategizing and getting in films either early or late with extended deadlines, and making sure it gets a chance to be seen. It's an unusual film, I think, in many ways. Our approach, which I think the timing for it was, extraordinary.
Timing is
oh
everything.
my gosh!
Yeah.
So with this film, V13 is the title, and I'm again looking forward to sharing it.
Now, you have had the luxury of being part of film production pre-COVID and COVID and post-COVID. How do you feel the production of filmmaking has changed, and what are some of the changes that's going to stick forever at that you see?
What's COVID?
That's
No,
the cooties.
Okay.
It's cooties.
Yeah,
third grade
now that it's the world has really changed, and filmmaking has changed with it, and some of it is because of the virus COVID, but also, frankly, the health and safety protocols have changed, and that not only involves sentences on a page, it also means a whole part of the industry has now grown up around keeping the cast and crew reasonably protected, so they keep going on. And so that's become a line in your budget, and it's for low budget films. It's a big number, it's a big part of your budget. So that is unfortunate. I mean, it's not something you're going to see on the screen. But at the same time, it keeps us going, and we don't have to put a whole lot of memorial statements at the end of the film, mm-hmm. which I'm happy about. Mm-hmm. It's I can't say anything. I can't think offhand of anything good about it. I mean, the one thing about COVID that changed was that for me, with the film I did prior to this, or that I distributed prior to this, Dieu Lacan, was we did a whole set of screenings online suddenly for different groups around the globe who were interested in this film. Because of its topic, which was around a famous psychoanalyst, French psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. And there were these different groups in Mexico, in Brazil, in Argentina, and France, and England. And suddenly it was the pandemic, and no one could go out. And we publicized that pre-release we would do screenings if you could get together 25 people. And it was great. I mean, it was really wonderful to connect to these very motivated, enthusiastic audiences in different parts of the world. Was just so great, and that was something that never existed beforehand. And so the possibility they would screen the film. We had a couple different ways of screening the film, either using Vimeo or Eventive, and they would sign up. We'd negotiate, what the fee was, depending on what we thought we should be paid and what they could afford. And so that was something that never existed before, and I think will stay around. This is a film, too, that has an international V13 audience, a connected audience. And so, I mean, that was a positive thing. And I'm very excited about that. I'm also excited about now that establishing these different audiences around the world to be able to go and sit down and have a glass of wine and meet these people. So that's been great. It's hard to not be able to mix it up more. It's hard not to have that, to be able to easily get together with your cast and crew early on without having to think about the possibility of passing a virus. Mm-hmm. So that's a tough blow to take. And we'll see how things evolve down the line. But it's significantly changed things, I think, largely in ways that are costly, particularly for small films, independent films, which is a really subject close to my heart, but it also has had opened up some opportunities because of the this now, whether it's Zoom or other kinds of online conferencing, which have become kind of secondhand to so many people. And then you can connect that to also screening through one online platform or another. And then I can interact and have a discussion with these groups. So that's an opportunity that's been created out of this, this horrible problem that's grown up. So it's not all negative. There is some silver lining, but it's definitely a hit to making films in terms of, as you remember, every few days we had to get tested. Mm-hmm. And that amazing amount of money is spent on testing.
3 times a week.
Yeah.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were super lucky. I mean, there was at least one HBO series. There were other films that were shut down because it got out of hand on their sets. Yeah. And we were, we walked a fine line, and we got very lucky and were able to finish.
Yeah. It's cool. Now, there was a very exciting drive-in movie theater culture before COVID, but then COVID kind of was an option, a safer option to go see films, which is, I've been in the inflatable pop-up drive-in movie industry for over 15 years, and then when COVID hit, there was a huge flux of people who wanted to do the drive-ins because that was the safest way to get out of the house, because as you know, everyone was experiencing ultra cabin fever.
Right.
And things were shut down, things were closed, and but to get in your car in the safety of your own car with your own people and watch a movie was kind of a nice little outlet. What's your take on post-COVID pop-up drive-in movie theaters, which is kind of what I'm doing now, producing movies in the park, producing drive-in movie theaters? What's your take on that?
Well, I think it's here to stay. I think it will be somewhat seasonal, but I think it's got again, it's one of those areas that has emerged. I was very interested in drive-ins in the beginning of the pandemic. Had a few online meetings, of course. They were online because of the pandemic. But it's interesting also because it really harks back to an earlier period, and again, I think it's one of the ways in which time flows in many different ways, and so you can see, just like what we're doing, harks back to radio. I think one can see how drive-ins that were there was a kind of nostalgia for drive-ins, but now, in addition to that, there's a real reason why people can go out and have that experience of being together, which I love. I still think of film as coming from the Lumiere brothers. There were these two early models, the model of Edison, who really saw the film as kind of like a peep show, which is like our cell phones.
Right.
And the Lumiere brothers, who imagined a whole bunch of people who don't necessarily know each other sitting and watching a moving picture together. And so it's these two opposing models, and for most of the time that cinema has existed since the end of the 19th century, it's been the model of the Lumiere brothers that's dominated. And then since the time of, I would say, with the emergence of the internet and cell phones and such, the model that Edison imagined has come to dominate in many ways. And but the model of the Lumiere brothers, which is like theater, you're sitting in a group, has a wonderful power to it. I think it says something about the power of. There's something very democratic about it. You're there with the demos. You're there with people, and you're watching a film, many of which have, in one way or another, reflect a sense of the people. Even the most comic films, horror films, zombie films, they're reflection in a very entertaining but also creative, and have a lot going on about people together and what it's like to be part of society. So to be able to see a film in a group, not just not just at home, in a private setting, but in a setting where you're kind of together, is still something that really draws people. It certainly draws me, and the drive-ins are a way of bringing that to people, or offering that. So I think it's got a new life, a renaissance to it.
We did 1,000-car drive-in for the Horror Fest out at the Rose Bowl a few years back, and we hired 30 zombies to kind of sneak up on the cars and scare people. We screened it over Halloween weekend. What do you think the fascination for
I can't wait to hear where
zombies-
this is going.
for zombies are? Because I love zombie movies. I love anything zombie. I launched the Pod Zombie Palooza Drive-In Film Festival for next year, and what's the fascination for zombie films? Like, what's
Oh gosh, there's a Jacques Tourneur film, I Walked with a Zombie, which I love, early zombie film. I think it's multifaceted. I don't know if there's a way, I guess, they reflect consumer society and a sense of being, of being drawn in terms of a mass in some way. But I think there are a lot of ways of interpreting it. I'm just glad there's that fascination and so much creative energy in going into I'm sure anything I came up with as an explanation would be immediately, not true in the next one. I mean, there's a kind of great creative juice. Zombies are fascinating. Also, their relation to Haitian culture and Haiti and all of that. I mean, it's got quite a history, the zombies. I've been always fascinated by zombie films and their, the lineage of zombie films. May the zombies, may the dead live. That's all I can.
Now, your limited experience in directing since you've been in it for a year, what would be
Right.
what does it take to be a director? What does it take to like have hundreds, even thousands of people that are all part of making what's in your mind captured through a lens onto film? What do you need? Like, what do you need to be a director? Like, what is it
Shortest
that you
answer is I don't know. But I think what I've over time is you're drawing on other people's creativity as well. You're kind of, I think what I love is what I loved about this most recent film, V13, is drawing from the cast and crew their own, that it becomes a meaningful work. It's creative work, that people feel like they're doing something that has a level to it which goes beyond anything that can be quantified, that it has a level at which it touches something in their own personal narrative, their own lives. And so, as I like to really get to know the crew and the cast, and I always feel, it's a short time that we're going to spend together. But if in that short time, what we're doing can touch their personal narrative in a way. So for me, it's a wonderful experience. And it's usually also about trying to serve some purpose outside of myself, to create the work, and that the work leads our work, and that I'm been given the extraordinary opportunity to kind of bring forth something as the director, but it's also kind of drawing the creativity of everyone around, and you never know where you're going to get a spark of a good idea from. It can come from anybody who's there, and you kind of take from that and draw on it. I think different directors work. Some are more drawn by a sense of the camera, some by working with actors. Some, of course, are more improvisational, and others work with a very tightly scripted film. So there's multiple approaches to it. But I think what I do, I had a love of poetry and writing earlier in life, and I think I love the poetry of film, you could say, the ability to play with images, with timing, with the rhythm of images, the way it has it also has a musical element, film. it takes place through time, and to be able to play with a sense of time is something very close to my heart. And I was thinking, as I've been editing, I've been thinking about when my son was very young and throwing a ball back and forth, and just how amazing it is to catch a ball, to throw, to see an object coming at you and be able to, raise your hand and to have it meet the ball. Just how deep an experience that is.
What goes into that?
What goes into that. And with film, too, you're cutting between two images, and it could be that a ball is, leaving one image and the next one someone catches it. But so you're playing with time, and and that is really a fascinating element. And then bringing that to the way you direct, the sense of timing and such. It's such a joy for me, it's a great joy. And this last one, what I think I've gotten better at over the years is being able to work with the different métier, with the different types of contribution that each person is making with their role in the filmmaking process. And being able to more carefully draw from them and bring them in, and they're ready to also serve the film, and then kind of know, okay, well, this is where I can really use you, and they kind of they're ready to go up to bat,
Mm-hmm.
and they hit a home run, and that's such a great feeling. So the collective process, writing is such a solo activity. You're all alone. And then filmmaking, it's such a collective activity. You're with a group, and it's just, for me, it's an ecstatic experience, exhausting. I mean, what we were doing was just absolutely exhausting. I mean, I'm 66, and I really feel it, during these shoots, It's like, when somebody who's, in his 20s picks me up at, 4:30 in the morning, and they're kind of like, yeah, hey. And I'm thinking, whoa, like, pace yourself, Richard, pace yourself. It's kind of, but at the same time, it's just, it's exhilarating too. It's a tremendously exhilarating process, and to feel that I can offer something to, to the project, to the crew, to the cast, and it's just, a wonderful experience.
Yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head. You wrote this last project that you did. Rumor has it took you like 13 years to
Put
write
together.
this. Yeah. Why do you think it took so long, or maybe it's not long enough? Who's to say how long you need to take to put together, what's really in your mind?
And the typewriter it turned out was missing the T, and so that. It was originally based on a play by a late friend of mine, a very famous French psychoanalyst named Alain Didier Weil, and we had done another film that did well, won at prize at Tribeca, and had a good life, and it was a great experience for him and for myself, and I had seen a staged reading of his play Vienna 1913 and thought it would make a film, and a very interesting film. And over the years, it became more and more timely. And so it was originally a play, and it was taking a play and making a film out of it. So I had the story, and I had the scenes and a lot of the dialogue, but it was transforming it into a film, but also, finding the money, finding the financing, how we were going to do it. And I don't want to give too much away, but as a historical drama, we could have done it one way, and then we did it another way, which was allowed us to do it in New York, and which was a very unique way to tell such a story, but was very timely because of the atmosphere, the time period we live in, with a lot of inequality, the rise of fascism, racism, anti-Semitism. There were a lot of echoes between this film that takes place in an earlier period and our own time. So shooting it the way we did was both meant we could do it for a smaller budget, but it necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, it was also great. I'm so excited. Now when I look at what we've done and I look at how we might have done it, I just feel, wow, this is, just a whole other level. I mean, it's so gutsy and provocative and interesting. So I'm so glad that I stuck with it and we did it this way. But so it was evolving process on so many ways. I mean, there was a level at which it was about the world. It's about the way the world has changed in those 13 years,
Right.
And how it's made the subject matter even more timely, and the approach no longer seemed like whimsical, but seemed like there was a real draw to it. So there's so many levels again that made this filmmaking process take place in this way at this time. It's quite something.
That's cool. I was able to witness how you work with talent and crew as well. I really like how you create your own culture of cast and crew so that you can get the most creative out of what you do. Because to be able to kind of set your people on a path so that you can maximize what you do, I find very, very fascinating. And it's important for me on my radar. My question to you is I was able to witness some of it, but I was on such a fringe. I wasn't actually in the thick of it all. But what is your style of working with talent to get what you need to get on that lens?
I think is having a prior to when we get going is to have a one-on-one. I try to do that with as many of the cast and crew as possible at some moment, is to have a one-on-one moment, because that's, for all of us, that's how we came into the world, and that's how we're going to leave it. And to have a moment where you have a one-on-one contact with each person means that before you get into the thick of, when everything is like jammed up and you have no time, you can still then go back to that experience. You can still go back and you've had that one-on-one, and you can, in a way, in the relationship, block out the noise, even though it is, it is just 100 things are happening. Chaos.
Control
pressure.
Yeah.
We're losing the light. This problem, this has gone out. Whatever it is, and you can kind of tune that out, and you can go back, and you still have that one-on-one, and you can tap into that, and then really focus on what needs to be done. So I think finding those moments with the cast, it's usually before you shoot. Those first conversations and everything are so important. I think you're contacting someone. You're choosing someone for their talent, but it's also for the conversation around the work somehow, you know. And so I think those are very important. And then with some of the cast and with some of the crew or major brother crew, that's got to take place. You find moments during your day where you can, you know, find that one-on-one and make that connection. And those connections, again, in the midst of this process, which can be, you know, so pressured and you know, you can't take time to reflect on what your childhood was like. You can still tap back into that one-on-one moment, and that allows you to really draw the best out of yourself and also the person you're working with.
What are some don'ts that you should not bring to a project or a set as a director? What are a couple don'ts?
Well, you know, I think there's a kind of one of the paradoxes about filmmaking is that, you know, as a directors, you need to stick to your vision. You know, you really need to be stubborn about that. But on the other hand, you have to you have to listen. You know, so it's theoretically it's impossible. They're really both they're in contradiction to each other. You have to both not listen to anyone, and you also have to listen to everyone. And so, you know, you have to be able to stay flexible in the midst of an impossible situation. So, you know, as to what you shouldn't bring, gosh, that's hard for me to say. But I think over time, if I look at the course of my work, I think I've gotten more able to be in the moment, you could say. I mean, that's also something that films of this size, you know, you can, you know, one of the things that the French filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard said is that every film is, in a way, has a documentary element. You know, that's why when a great actor dies, we go back and the way we see their lives is to show moments of her career, you know, show her through a set of films, because in addition to making each of those films, it showed us her life, you know. And so that element of documentary, that you're really capturing the moment, you know, you really, it's in addition to whatever you've thought through before, it's a moment, you know, you're there together, and it's ephemeral. Mm-hmm. And if you can capture that moment, you know, it's gold. So you really have to, I think, be in the moment and realize it's got to happen there. It's got to happen in that moment. Mm-hmm. I think that's very important, which doesn't mean you don't plan. I mean, you can, I mean, on the contrary, and some directors work with a lot of improv. Some directors rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. And, you know, you'll be amazed sometimes that, you know, films which have taken just extraordinary amounts of rehearsal and such look absolutely spontaneous. So there's not a formula, but nevertheless, it's that sense of you're looking at it at that moment, I think, is just so wonderful. And it's why we have these great reels of different actors throughout their careers, you know, and we can see them as a young person, see them when they get older, and you really, you know, it touches us so deeply because we see a life, and that they were alive, and that they stay alive because in those moments they were, you know, the film has captured them in a sense of being alive, and so that really is something you have to be there and you have to capture that moment.
That's awesome. We talked earlier before we were rolling about radio and the state of entertainment back in the day and how we've kind of evolved into TV, film, live streaming on the internet, now doing podcasts, which kind of
Right.
a circle back around to old time radio. What's your take on the evolution of radio as entertainment as it recycles to us right now sitting here doing a podcast?
Right. Well, yeah, I was very fortunate early on in life that I got a chance to correspond, meet a few times with a poet named Archibald MacLeish, who was a modern poet. He was the first, I think, poet laureate of the United States after the Second World War. And his claim to fame is a radio play called J.B., which is about the story of Job. And he had really been convinced before television came along that radio would be a medium that would create a renaissance for poetry because it was about the voice. And of course that disappeared when television emerged. But in a way, radio has the sense of the voice has a renaissance, I think, through the medium of podcasts. And the other thing about radio was that, unlike television, it was kind of anarchic. I mean, I remember when I was a young person building a radio. I mean, and there was a sense that
we all did that, yeah,
right?
We're that generation.
Yeah, and
I built radios as well.
Yeah, and you could broadcast.
Yeah.
Wow, and
Yeah.
that's something that when television came along, the big players, they said, "Hey, we missed the boat with radio, but we're going to control TV. We're going to make a pie." Get the government, make the pie, divide it up. Each of us is going to get a big slice, and nobody's going to be able to come in and just, do their own thing like radio. And the internet is a little bit of both, but it also has that kind of FYI.
Back to we all can do it.
Yeah, DIY, do it yourself dimension to it. So that's great, So that's also something that I think has come back, I mean, it's kind of, we live in such a contradictory time in terms of, never before. I mean, everybody carries a video camera with them.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
think about that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the distribution routes
A video camera that can stream
Yeah, right.
in real time
Yeah.
to the world.
And then at the same time, these distribution channels, I mean, again, to quote Godard said, well, if Hollywood could only if they could make as much money every year making only one movie, they'd only make one movie. And you can argue with that, but certainly there's been a concentration on these super huge films. There is a way in which there's this pyramid which has these incredible, so that even though there are all these films being made, if you go out into the commercial cinemas, globally, they're dominated by a very small number of films, and I think that's the paradox, both that we have the ability to make films and podcasts and to make work. But yet the channels are dominated in a certain way that are about, as Godard said, really kind of focusing where the money is made. And so even though a lot of work's being made to make back the money, to make a living, is as precarious, if not more precarious than ever before. So, I think that's a real dilemma, a real paradox about our
Well,
time.
you also have that, the world conquer syndrome where you have people just want all of it. They want to be number one. They want to monopolize and they
Right.
want to control. And stand-up comedy has taught me that that's not practical. That's not my world. That's not my approach. Because you look at that audience and you see the people who are laughing and you see the 5 or 6 who aren't. And sometimes you have a tendency to like really focus on them, especially at the beginning. Like, why aren't they laughing? And then what do I need to do to get them laughing, overlooking the 94% of the audience that's laughing at everything that you're doing.
Right.
And I think my comedy career has allowed me to understand the approach I want to take for my film career, because I'm not trying to be number one, the best, the blockbuster, and follow the formula of the suits that are looking at the bottom line. I want to do what makes me laugh, what makes me, what inspires me, what motivates me, and I don't really care if these people aren't
Right,
feeling it
right.
or those people aren't feeling it. And I kind of feel you kind of have that same approach with your film. I mean, we just met on this thing, but we had a real instant connection
Yes.
in seconds, which I thought was pretty fascinating. And I get the feel that your filmmaking and your writing is kind of that same kind of strategy. Can you expound on that? Like, you know, what's your take on your work in the marketplace? How do you think it's received? You know, is it about kind of what you feel in your mind and heart, and who loves it, who doesn't, that's okay?
Yeah, I guess I think also about, there was this French writer, Roland Barthes, who would talk about readerly text versus writerly text. And writerly text would be where, as a reader, you get involved. You kind of you figure out a bit of what it is. And there's a Hollywood model of filmmaking as like being on a roller coaster, where the audience is completely passive. And one of the things that was said about deep focus in the days when Orson Welles was making films is that it allowed the audience to decide where they would focus their attention, what was going on and what was interesting. And I think there's a way in which I'm interested in the audience as part of the productive process, that the audience is involved in the storytelling, that they have a real role to play actively in making meaning, that they're really empowered in some way. It's not a passive experience. It's a involved experience. I mean, you can only do that. It's a delicate balance because people aren't coming to work when they come to see a play, or a film, but they can come to be engaged in some way, so I look to engage an audience, to have them be involved in a sense in the production of the film, in the production of its meaning. Yeah.
That's cool. That's very cool. If money were no issue, and time and place and
Are you writing
rules,
me a check? Man,
I'm writing you a check from the Bank of Kimbrough. I'm not sure when you'll be able to cash it, but it feels good. Who would you love to work with? Like
I don't want to.
If you could just snatch the ultimate person, whether it's a director, producer, actor, writer, and there were no issues in the Hollywood entanglement of trying to get somebody attached, like all that was removed.
Gosh, it would depend on the particular project, and
okay, hold that. What do you look for in finding a project? Like, what excites you? I know doing your own stuff is exciting, obviously.
Right.
But, like, what excites you? Like, what kind of project catches your ear or catches your eye?
I think, in a way, is one element that I think over time is watching and witness, where watching becomes witnessing, is that there's a sense in which watching can be amazingly horribly passive. In other words, on my cell phone this morning, I probably saw 6 or 7 atrocious things that happened around the world, on which I can have almost no impact, and where I can't even remember it the next day. So that relationship to watching is a very painful one. But where watching becomes witnessing, where there's an element of engagement, and this ability to feel we've seen something on a certain level that makes us think about seeing in a different way. I mean, what's amazing about in the time of since cinema first came about in the 19th century, when it was considered a shelter from time. In other words, you'd escape from your day and you'd go see a movie. Now, if you go to see a movie, you can actually, in that period of time, see fewer images than you would see on your cell phone. It's a kind of economy of images which have been given a meaning. There's an aesthetic. Suddenly this disorganized chaotic world of images in which we all live. We stand in line somewhere and there's a TV and there are images and we're seeing images constantly on our cell phones and such. So we live in this world just saturated with images. And so there's a way in which film, rather than being an escape from time, can be a shelter for time. It's a place where we can rediscover time. In other words, the way that in this chaos of images, there's no past, there's no future. It's just this constant bombardment, and then we can go and through a film organize a sense of time and rhythms and such, and it's a shelter. It's a place where we can go and rediscover a sense of individual life, of a culture maybe that we don't know, of a story we don't know. So I think the role of film has kind of changed as we've become a more image-oriented, image-saturated society, that film now can play a role of a kind of where time is reborn, where we get back in touch with the complexity of time, where the past and the future and the present kind of get woven together. And so I think I look for that. I think I look for a way, because I think that's in a way a new role for film. That's a way in which cinema and film has a new role for us, which is this role of getting us, being able to put us back in touch with something that we can actually get distracted from. We can lose touch with as we, again, are constantly seduced by images, shocked by images, aroused by images, in a kind of chaotic way in which, that are orchestrated by these large corporations to sell us something, and which we don't have much control over. And it's a choice to go in and see a film can be a kind of restoration of a certain sense of humanism, of humanity, of what it is to be a human being.
That's awesome. So rewind the tape to an attachment that had no obstacles. Who would you want to work with?
Oh yeah, you're going to go
other
back.
than Stephen Kimball,
I'm avoiding
the Pod
this.
Brothers.
Gosh, I love the people I've had an opportunity. I'm going to avoid this, Kimbrough. No, just because, I've been very fortunate, and knock on wood. Yeah, there's wood. I will continue to be so. I'll wait and take those phone calls or those opportunities when they arise. But there are many people whose whose work I admire and would love to work with, and yeah, I love the conversations. I love the meetings. I think actors know that I love them. I mean, not
Well, you can see it. I mean, being a fly on the wall, I can see the attachment and the passion and the relationship that you have with your actors. It's really cool to see.
and I think they feel that, which is really great, which is really nice that I have, I love working with them, and I love the process, and I love the work, and so it's a great experience, and I think that's what's allowed me to find and to work with people, extraordinary people, who, when they work on a film with the kinds of budgets I usually work with, could make more in an hour than they're going to, they're taking a hit because this is work that really counts for them, and so and I think part of it is I'm really attentive to them. I've done my work. I have something to offer, and I'm looking forward to collaborating.
See, with me, I'd love to work with Denzel Washington.
Yeah,
Of
of course.
Whether it's a buddy film
Me too,
or
I
a
mean.
suspense or a thriller, I think it would just be cool to, to work with him
Yeah.
on any capacity, on any level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be fun.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting too with actors. Also, is when you play them against type or with type.
Hmm.
That's also very very interesting. Yeah, it's great. It's a great process.
So I have to ask you before we get out of here. We got a couple more minutes before we bounce. Being a stand-up comedian, I always like to know, what my guests' favorite comedians are. You're a funny dude, by the way. You're hysterical.
Listen. I'm
I was in the car. I was in the lead car with you on one of the days we were shooting like a car scene, and dude, you're cracking me up. You're funny.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know what I owe that to, but I was just happy as a clam. I mean, it was just, yeah. And I've never really done just a straight out comedy, and so that's something that's on my wish list.
I think you should.
All right.
There's comedy deep in you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you definitely should. Who's one of your favorite comedians? Like who makes you laugh?
Oh gosh, so many. But I'm gonna talk about films. Filmmakers that are comedians, and they're old. They're too old, oldie goldies. Mel Brooks, a guy named Ernst Lubitsch, were two comedy filmmakers that I really love. A lot of contemporary comedians, but it's interesting. I think one of the things is, speaking about comedians, is how much pressure is on comedians these days. I think about Chris Rock, and who's someone I love, whose work I love, and what happened to him at the Oscars and such, and how a certain level of inability to appreciate comedy and the chances it takes and how it stretches us, and how that's affected comedy.
I think comedy, I mean, being a comedian is the last line of defense for truth
Yeah.
because everybody is so quick to spit their truth,
Yeah.
which is nowhere close to the actual truth.
Right.
And in order for comedy to work, it has to come from a credible, practical, factual place.
Right. And it's also so deeply truthful. And, you know, if you look back often, serious takes on subjects are just self-serving, virtue signaling. It's really the comedians that have, cut to the chase, that have had something significant and powerful to say. That's often where the truth emerges, is in comedy, not in. I love tragedy. I love serious work, but that's often not at all where, if you look back, where the things that were really said that had a lot of guts, it comes out of comedy. That's really, which is, where it's just really truthful. So absolutely, I totally agree with it. And we've gotten to a society that seems so caught up in modeling virtue and kind of amazingly forgetful of human reality, which is very complicated, and full of conflicts. Mm-hmm. It's conflicted, our relationship to authority. I mean, here we are, where we both want kind of individual control and autonomy and everything, and we have these problems like climate change, which call for, a lot of, it's not about one-on-one. These are things that call for collective and in some cases institutional attention. So our relationship to authority is kind of conflicted in all these things. But for whatever reason, we've kind of reduced things a lot to, where virtue becomes how I phrase things, what I say. And it's really not about me, It's really not about, if I put everything. I mean, I do sort my trash. I want to be clear about that. But, that's not the level on which these things, it's going to be about what we can do on larger levels, on political levels and such. And we've gotten so focused that virtue and personal choices and personal this and personal that, and it's kind of a fictional idea of the way human beings are, and focuses people on morality in a kind of artificial way, and then to comedians who talk a truth, about just how fucked up things are, but kind of really illuminate things. And they've become messengers that a certain part of the audience, these audiences don't want to hear. And so they've really been, I think, scapegoated, and it's a really, dismal part of our of reality.
Yeah, but that's also part of why doing stand-up is so gutsy, because you are constantly under scrutiny. You're constantly under the threat of disapproval by somebody or some group or something, but you push through anyway. It's like you're given a gift. You're blessed with this sense of humor, with this lens in which you see the world, and how you can take anything that's tragic or uncomfortable and lighten it to the point to where you can listen to it, see it, process, heal, learn from it. And that's one of the only ways you're going to be able to do it. It's one of the only outlets that will give you a path to heal from whatever it is in the first place.
Right.
So, I've always been a lover of laughter, which is why I got into being a stand-up. I used to make my grandfather laugh doing the silliest things and didn't know why it was funny. But to have him laugh at me being ridiculous or being silly or being a cornball
Right.
or mocking some family members, um, the healing process of being the person to make him laugh was just as therapeutic as him laughing at me. So we both wins on both sides of that volley.
Yes, absolutely.
And sometimes it would be some tragic things that happen in our family or
Absolutely.
happen with me or happen with him, to be able to, make light of it in some way or to joke about it was very therapeutic. And
Absolutely.
I used humor as a tool to defuse and to engage and to ignite, inspire, and motivate from a young age. And then in the 80s, when cable TV came along and Bud Freeman, Evening at the Improv, and I'm sitting watching this like, these guys are on TV doing what I would love to do. And, and I ended up doing that. And I've been there ever since. And
That's great. And I guess the connection to filmmaking, I would, is that in terms of directing in these projects, is there's a temptation at self-censorship that you have to overcome.
mm-hmm.
You have to kind of let it go and stand up. I mean, you really have to, not be stopped by your super ego, to use a psychoanalytic term. But, and I think actually, ironically, in this world of the cell phones and such, we have a kind of self-censoring, and that's what we maybe scapegoat onto comedians. Oh,
Yeah.
they're letting
That's exactly
themselves,
what happens, yeah.
and it's just so important not to be shut down in that way. And also the thing of an audience. I remember I once wanted to do a work about torture, and I was put in touch with an Argentinian playwright, a director who had been tortured. And, we met, and one of the first things he said to me was, don't forget about comedy. He said, comedy. He would say that under the dictatorship in Argentina, people would be in an audience, and they were so worried about what they'd say. They'd be so worried, their whole day, what did I write? Where did I leave it? What did I say to someone? And suddenly they'd explode with laughter. Something would make them all laughter. And they'd realize, holy shit, everybody laughed.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't alone.
Right.
I'm in this room, and we all laughed at that.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So it's a great way to put people together and free people up. No matter what the topic, it can be just so great when people suddenly can kind of let go in that way.
Well, that's why the formula of a perfect comedy conducive audience environment is to have the audience completely in the dark so they can laugh autonomously with each other.
Yes.
Without identifying each other.
Interesting, yeah.
And, especially if the topic or the issue of the material is super sensitive and super personal.
Right.
You don't want people to know that you're laughing at it. So if you can sit in the dark,
Yes.
not be identified, but release that laughter because you can relate to that in unison,
Yeah.
and we can all have that anonymity, that's what makes those kind of environments work in a comedy situation.
Yeah.
Because you're not going, oh, Richard laughed at some pretty weird shit, which
Right.
means he's a weird dude. But if you're in the dark, I can't see
Yeah.
you, you can't see me,
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
can all laugh.
Yeah.
We can heal from that. And we
Yes.
can be like, okay, we could still keep our facade
Right.
of societal acceptance, but we just had a release
Right.
of honesty and vulnerability in the dark,
Right.
and nobody knows who laughed at what.
Right. Right.
And that's one of the things that makes it so, so healing. And
Interesting.
it's communal as well,
Yes.
because, oh, snap, I'm normal.
Right.
there's 500 people in here, and at least 400 of them laughed at something that I thought I was the only one that did that, and I thought I was weird because of it.
Yes, yes.
And that's fascinating.
Yeah,
To me.
yeah.
I could chop it up with you all day, bro.
Same here.
But I think we're going to call it a day, and we should do this again for sure.
Okay, great, Kimbro.
Yeah.
When we get this out and we got a little, we don't have to wait too long, but we'll get a little bit of, how's it going?
Yeah.
And we can say, well, this and that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some little evolution.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm with you all the way to the end, bro. So
Thank you, Kimbro.
whatever step and phase that you want to get dribs and drabs, time capsule releases of what you want the public to know about the film, and
Okay.
where you are with it, call me up and we'll pull the mics out and we'll chop it up again.
Good. Thank you, Kimbro.
Yeah. Where can we find you on the socials, my brother?
Well, I'll just mention for this film right now. I mean, I'm on Twitter. I'm on, the usual Instagram and everything. But I would just say for this film, the website, the one we've been talking about, which is V13, which is v13movie.com.
Mm-hmm.
The letter V, the number 13, movie, all running together, and then .com.
Awesome.
And there they can go and they can find out about the film. There's a link to my website, richardleeds.com. There's also a newsletter that I put out periodically they can subscribe to, and those are probably the best. So v13movie.com, I think, is the best.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to bookmark that, make it my favorite.
Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. You guys can find me, All Things Funny, at podbrother.com. That's where I'm doing my comedy. You can find programs like this on Podbrother Nation. This particular show is going to be on a designated channel that I created called the Pod Owl, and that's where you can go and you can learn some stuff. And this whole hour that I've spent with Rich, I've learned so much, and you can learn a lot. If you want to download the app, go to owl.com. That's OWWLL.com. Download that app, and there'll be a lot of experts and professionals and influencers and motivators where you can just take a few bucks and learn some things. You can ask them whatever you want to ask them and learn some stuff. So we know you got tons of stuff to do, and we're excited that you took some time out to hang with me. And what I want you to do from me to you is be nice to yourself, because if you're nice to yourself, you're going to be nice to everyone else. So I'm the Pod Owl, a.k.a. Kimbro. Peace out. You guys have been fun. Thank you.
Bye.